back. James Harden right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey. Joel Embiid.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap Media YouTube channel. You know me, Sean Bernard, as usual. I'm back with my guy, James Brain. Been a little bit of a break, but back in action. James, how we doing?
I'm doing well, man. Sixers get a win against the Suns. I hate that team. I really do. Every time that the Sixers play them, I end up hating them more, but doing well. We're back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And with me, we have a special guest today, my coworker at Heavy.com. Make sure to check out his written work as well. Spencer Richardson, how we doing?
I'm great, Sean. Super good. Thanks for having me on. Like James said, super pumped, about to win. I'm ready to dive in. Let's get it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the outlook of the times have picked up a little bit in the Sixers world. We see Joel Embiid, the prophet that he is, declaring that the season starts now. So I don't know. We'll start off with that. What are you guys kind of opening thoughts on that? Are you okay with that mindset? Did you find it funny? Spencer, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Embiid would like us to believe that the season started with a statement win against the Suns. You know, I wish that the season started with a statement win against the Suns, but unfortunately, we have 10 games before that to kind of judge the team. And we know that this team's a work in progress. We have seen it. I think there are a lot of good things that came out of that Suns win. But, you know, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit here. We had Cam Johnson out for the Suns. Chris Paul was limited to 13 minutes. DeAndre Ayton wasn't 100% the whole game. So, you know, you got to beat the team that's in front of you. And it was a good win against the Suns, and they took care of business against the Suns. But, Suns did have a couple people out. So yeah. That's kind of my, I hope the season begins, and I hope this is the start of good things for them. But I'm gonna approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism, as I think any hardcore Sixers fan probably would.
Yeah, totally fair. And I also want to talk about this Joel Embiid, the way he's presented himself of being fully past being online or being like that, just completely not the case. That guy sees everything, reads everything. The amount of jokes on Twitter about Sixers season starts after the Phillies, and for him to directly acknowledge that, I think is hilarious. I think it's so funny. I would like to say I appreciated the comment. There were some people that got genuinely mad about it, which I think is kind of crazy. But James, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think Spencer made a statement there. Any hardcore fan would feel that way. Absolutely. I'm irrational though, so I go about it whatever the direction Joel Embiid is going. I'm also going to go that way. I thought it was funny, man. This team is Sean. You and I talked last week about the fact that Embiid said he didn't play basketball this summer, and we were all like, "Yeah, sure, buddy." That's definitely a lie. And then we got into the season. It was like he might not have played any basketball this summer. So I'm starting to just take what he says seriously. If he decides that was game one, then to me, it's game one. I think he went out there and played like it, though. Defensively, I think what I'm looking at right now is less about the record, less about the teams that they're playing or whatever, this and that. It's more just about the Sixers against themselves. Joel Embiid looked fantastic defensively, and this team locked in. Holding any team in the NBA to 88 points is a feat, and they were able to do that. Honestly, what it looked like once they decided to lock in, it was pretty easy for them. The ball moved a little bit offensively as well, so I was cool with it. I enjoy watching them beat that team. It's nice.
Yeah, and I do think that was the healthiest he's looked this year. It felt like he was moving better. It looked like he had his wins about him more than I even expected, to be honest. I liked how they kind of let him freely sub in and out. And also Paul Reed getting all the backup minutes was awesome to see as well. So it was kind of cool seeing Embiid just kind of signal to the bench when he wanted in, when he wanted out. And based on that, he played a healthy dose of minutes, which is more than I also expected. And I do think there's an aspect of we're kind of seeing this throwback to the before the James Harden trade version of the Sixers while he's out. And I kind of think that could be beneficial in the long run to make sure Embiid is now kind of the guy we're playing through and then add Harden back into the mix. Spencer, do you think there's any weight to that? Embiid could kind of come into form during this absence?
I think not only is it possible, I think it has to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Embiid, and he's kind of talked about this, right? I think after the Suns game, stepping into more of a playmaking role. And that's, when you're losing Harden, who's, getting double digit assists, 10 plus every game. You need somebody to fill that void. And I think that's going to fall on Embiid partially. I think it's going to fall on Maxey partially. Harris isn't exactly the playmaking god, but I think, he's going to have to step up as well. But no, I think Embiid is going to have to step up here. And we kind of have seen this iteration of the Sixers team, right, play really well. Last year, Simmons is out. They're dealing with all of that kind of baggage in the background. And we're kind of seeing them, like you're saying, Sean, revert back to what they know. And probably for a lot of them, what's really comfortable to them, which I think you saw play out in the Suns game. The chemistry, I think, on the floor between guys like Maxey, between guys like Harris, between Embiid, who have put in the time on the court together. I think that paid off against the Suns. And that's not to say Harden's like the reason that the Sixers got out slow or anything like that. But I just think there's a certain comfort level that you can't replicate with anything other than reps and time. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we're kind of seeing that. And especially from the playmaking aspect, it felt like Embiid was just kind of more in tune with it, with running the offense, with being more comfortable with things kind of going through him, which is an awesome thing. And James, how about you? What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Spencer hit a lot of the nails on the head there. With this team, I think it's going to be nice for Embiid to get his footing back under him. Like I mentioned a lot, I think this identity, a lot of what they talked about, especially coming into this season, was the defensive identity. And Embiid having to go out there and prove why he's, noted as one of the best interior and perimeter defenders for a big. Like that defensive possession against Devin Booker is like things you just don't see. Like file that under the unicorn file for Joel Embiid. It's stuff that you just don't see, and no other big is doing that. And he's able to, at his size, do things like that when he's locked in. Rebounding looked a lot better. I know a lot of people were concerned about the rebounding there as well. That's something that Embiid has to shoulder a little bit more. And I think that was it. There was points in time the first 8-10 games they looked just a little bit lazy, lackadaisical in certain areas. Yesterday, I think, was where they started to turn it up a bit, and that makes a big difference. So I don't know. I don't know if it's like a good and bad thing. It's always bittersweet losing a guy like Harden. The other guys have to step up. We've seen Embiid do that in the first game without him. One of those things as well, I think if Embiid's getting going, Harden had such a good portion of the first part of the season offensively that if they're both firing on all cylinders, all it's going to be is that meshing period where they find a way to balance. And then it's kind of the horses are out to the race. So like once they both get going, it's really, really difficult to stop that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on the defense. Defense specifically, I think, is one of the things with the Sixers team that kind of starts and ends with Joel Embiid. And that's kind of when we've been banking on is he's a guy who can make up for others' mistakes and allow them to gamble on things, protect the rim and do that. And he hasn't been that guy to start that year. And I think we kind of started to see the signs of it against the Suns. If he can bring that level on the defensive end, I think that makes up even more of an impact that we're going to see offensively. And Harden's obviously not a guy that's going to be helping with the defensive effort very much in this absence. So we have kind of a little bit of an out to see how that plays out. But in addition to Embiid, Maxey's the obvious name that pops out. But how do you think Harden's absence impacts Maxey and anybody else on the team that you think makes a major impact? And Spencer, we can hop to you first.
Yeah, I think that it's not an original take. It's not a new take, but I've seen it everywhere. This is Maxey's time to make his all-star case, right? Yeah. Like before the season, the vibes were great. The vibes were immaculate. We were talking about, could the Sixers have potentially 4 all-stars? Could this be Harris's first time getting an all-star? And we kind of had Embiid and Harden locked in. And we kind of glossed over Maxey a little bit. I think we were all still kind of high on the way he ended the season last year. And he's, to his credit, picked right back up. He's shooting the heck out of the ball from 3 right now. And I think with Harden gone, Maxey, in a similar way to Embiid, is going to have to step up. He's young, but we've seen him seriously take over games at this, even this far into his young career. So I think he's going to have to step up. I think he can step up. He's not, I think during training camp, there was a lot of questions about can Maxey kind of figure out how to pass better or feed Embiid in the post a little bit better. So we're going to keep an eye out on that. I think his assist numbers could be up a little bit, but in terms of just playmaking, I think, yeah, it's going to fall to Embiid and Maxey. And I think if Maxey wants to really make an all-star case, this is the time, this next month, these next couple weeks, when we're looking at, the all-star team in a couple months, it's going to maybe come back to these couple weeks. What was Maxey doing? Was Maxey stepping up? Was Maxey filling Harden's shoes? He more than filled Ben Simmons' shoes last year. So, and I'm sure Harden's shoes are a little bit smaller just because he has smaller feet. But I think Maxey's more than capable of doing it for sure.
Yeah, James, what about you?
Yeah, man. We've seen it. Like, I don't have any reasons why not. Right. Like, at this point, we've seen him against all odds, against no odds. He's going to do what he's going to do. I think the training wheels are kind of off with Maxey as well. When, you're kind of mentioning the all-star case, like, it's year 3 now. Like, none of us are surprised by this. None of the defenses, Sean, like we mentioned this, like, none of the defenses are surprised by this anymore. Like, it's not, oh shit, Maxey's going crazy tonight. It's like, we have to scheme against stopping him. Because he's going to be a point of offense every single night, with or without Harden, without Embiid. I think Harden has liberated Maxey in a way that we haven't seen yet. Being able to fully die into being a shooting guard, being a scoring guard, rather than try to play a faux point guard position, which he's just, he's not. It's one of those things that he's just not. I think it's something he can grow into as a playmaker. Like you said, Spencer, is something he definitely could work on. And it's nice to have such a fantastic and enjoyable young player that's doing so many good things, and then looking at it and being like, he can grow here. And the thing with Maxey is, I don't see why he wouldn't grow there. He's done enough over the last 2 years to make me think he can get better at anything the minute he wants to. So I don't know, man. I love Maxey. I think this season it started like he had a couple games where it was like 8 or 10 points. And I was like, yeah, it just gung-ho. Maxey's going out. He's shooting 50% from 3. He's doing all the crazy stuff that he does. And I think he's doing a really good job of picking his spots and being aggressive when the team needs him to be. This is a good time for him to develop in those situations as well. So I think it's always a good thing for Maxey. I think he's going to thrive regardless.
Yeah. And kind of what you mentioned there is like, he is now like a legitimate guy in the NBA that is circled on scouting reports, that is paid attention to, and he's earned that. It's awesome to see. And this is kind of we're going to kind of see like what I think now is the clearest chance to see what he can fully grow into, whether that is like kind of a point guard who can play make, whether it is a pure scorer and he just can't quite handle the playmaking roles yet. Because we've seen him, he was completely freed up by Harden when Harden had his arrival. Maxey, when he stepped into the Ben Simmons shoes, like, he did enough as a playmaker and enough as a point guard to kind of make it happen, but it just wasn't naturally his game. And we saw the scoring numbers go up, the efficiency go up after Harden's arrival, playing next to him and allowing him to just naturally score the basketball. His isolation numbers have not been great this year. So I'm curious to see how that changes. It's a difficult task for a guy trying to create separation, and still a small sample size based on the year, so not like panicking or any means. I also really would love to see some 2-man game with Embiid and Maxey, because that's something I want to carry over even when Harden comes back. Because the way that Maxey can attack downhill, the threat of his pace is something so dynamic and something that just is like nowhere else on this roster and really in the NBA. So I think finding a way to work that in, building a chemistry between those two is going to be such a huge thing during this time off. And we've kind of touched on the playmaking and the ball handlers. And really, when you look at this roster, it's kind of glaring that James Harden's the only real true playmaker on this team. Do you think that the Sixers are short a ball handler? And is that what you would consider a point of need at this point? How about you, Spencer?
Oh, well, I think we're going to find out. I mean, I think over the next couple of weeks, we're going to find out. Doc Rivers said preseason he wants Harden to be scoring Magic Johnson. So, if you have a scoring Magic Johnson on your team, I don't know if you need another ball handler or another playmaker. But if Harden's not going to be reliable, at least injury wise, for the rest of the season or down the road, or if they're going to have to put him on some kind of minutes restriction or limit his playing time in any other way, whether it's sitting out back-to-backs or whatever, then there's probably going to need to be somebody who can then take the load off of Maxey, and whether they're tasked with running the second unit or just splitting reps with Maxey outright, that would be up to Rivers. But I think we're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not this team has enough ball handling, has enough playmaking. As of right now, I would say probably, just because, like you said, Sean, the roster's devoid of any real playmaking outside of Harden. Right before I hopped on, I was curious. I looked at the Sixers like assist numbers this season. And it's like Harden at far and away first, right? With 10 plus assists per game. And then second's Maxey, I think at like 4, right? So if there's, you can't really, either you need more people that are doing 4 or whatever, or you just need somebody that can bridge that. And so I think my gut says probably need somebody else, and there's an open roster spot for it. But we're going to find out pretty quickly.
Yeah. James, what about you?
So I think it's like this weird in between, right? Like all the points that Spencer you're making are entirely correct. Like there's no other even secondary, tertiary playmaker on this team. Obviously, guys with the ball in their hands are going to have to make plays. So that's why you see numbers from like 4.5 from Maxey, 3.5 from Embiid. But really, when you're thinking about it, like this team is built for the playoffs. We're looking at this roster going into 10, 12 guys at most. Right now, you have a subpar, but I guess sufficient ball handler and a guy like Shake, who actually has proven to be able to make plays at least here and there. With a guy that has the gravity like Embiid. Like Embiid makes it pretty easy on guys, so like he's been able to do it subtly. And then like I know we don't like it, but D'Anthony Melton's gonna have the ball in his hands here and there, and then you're gonna have Maxey as well. But when it comes down to it, like Harden's gonna be playing 40 minutes a night, and the ball's gonna be in his hands for 15 seconds out of the 24-second shot clock, like every time. So, and as frustrating as that can be sometimes, it's kind of the way it is with him. And it's what you love about him. The guy's averaging over 10 assists per game. He's had 17 in a game this year. Like there's times where he dominates the basketball game on a level beyond what everyone else is playing. So yeah, you could bring a guy in, but I think it's going to have to be a guy that like doesn't really matter that much. Isn't going to like really, like you're not really making a trade at this point, right? For a secondary ball handler when you have a guy like James Harden. It's going to have to be a buyout guy or a guy that's on the market right now. It's going to have to be a guy that can play next to Maxey. So it can't be like Kemba, and it can't be like some of those like older guys. Like, I don't know. It's just like a really strange spot to be in. It's like, I don't know if they go do that right now, especially we're already a week and a half or a week into Harden's injury. Like, I don't know. I really don't know if there's a correct answer. And Spencer, you said leave it up to Doc after that. And then it's like, I don't know if I want to do that, or it's like, it's his decision. It's like, I almost like rather like keep the cards away from Doc. Like, don't let him play the game. Like he's got to, he already has what he has. Like, let him figure it out.
all of my stock on Doc Island is I have sold. The beach house is boarded up. It's shuttered. I'm out on Doc, but
I don't think many people are still there, to be honest.
No.
Yeah, so nobody. Let's talk about that a little bit. So the slow start, we've seen all kind of the immediate jump to Doc Rivers, fire Doc Rivers. There kind of was an interesting article, not to fully put on blast, but Keith Pompey writing about the like Doc Rivers would just be the fall guy if they elect to like get rid of him here. The Sixers obviously still have $24 million on the books that they're due to pay him, so I don't think they're going to be in a rush to get him gone. How do you guys feel as far as how much responsibility Doc holds for this, and like I guess the outlook moving forward with him as a head coach? James, you want to lead off here?
Yeah, I mean, like it's just, again, it's so difficult. Nobody thinks that Doc Rivers is the best option right now. Although you're looking out there, and what is there? You obviously Sam Cassell, and we've been calling for this. Like we've been talking about this for 2 years now. But this is who Doc is. He's unimaginative. He's old. He's not creative. He lacks the creative bug to, draw up a good modern NBA offense that is consistent. It's like he's being outcoached in a plethora of ways in so many different games. But at the end of the day, like he is Doc Rivers. He commands some sort of respect. He is a brand to have here, which is important, like whether we want to admit it or not. It's part of what they do. They're not dumb. And he has merit to a degree. He does have merit, a lot of respect around the league. And I think that there is something to be said about the way the preseason went. And, there are some good things coming around at some point. I just don't think that it's ever going to change. So I've kind of like, am I out on Doc for sure? But I do not really think that they're going to make a change. So I've kind of just allowed it to be what it is. And until things become catastrophic, I'm probably just going to be on the boat of like, he's going to be here until the wheels fall off. So you might as well just strap in and hope that the three guys on this team that are above everyone else can make it happen.
Yeah. What about you, Spencer? What is it that made you sell your stock in Doc Island?
Honestly, it's funny. I'm going to take a page out of the Phillies playbook, and I say,
Sure.
I don't know if anybody thought Rob Thompson was going to be the guy, or I don't think. I mean, I think you had Joe Girardi, who was also old, also a very old school manager, very stuck in his ways, and the Phillies said, you know what, it's time to cut bait, it's time to cut our losses, and let's just get a new vibe in the locker room, and the players responded to it. I don't think you're going to have that problem with the Sixers, obviously, because if anything, guys like Embiid, guys like Maxey, guys like Harris, those are franchise guys. They are going to toe the line, just like they did with Ben Simmons. They're not going to come out and blast Morey for not moving on from Rivers sooner, just like they didn't go out in the media and blast Morey for taking Tyrese Halliburton and some peanuts for Simmons last year. So what made me sell my stock on Rivers Island, I think it's, I remember the flood of articles that came in after the Sixers signed Harrell, and just how awful things went down with Doc in that Clipper series. And it's, as a fan or as a writer or whatever, you're like, he's got to have learned, right? He has to, like, this cost him a job in Los Angeles, for goodness sake, right? Like,
the same guy,
right? And it's the same player, and we saw some Paul Reed finally, like you mentioned earlier, Sean, against the Suns, but up to this point, it's been, and not just this season, like in seasons past, it's been going with these veterans who are washed or whose best days are clearly far behind him, but for whatever reason, Doc just trusts them. Doc trusts them either because they've been around like he has or whatever. But it's like James was saying, it's unimaginative. I'm not sure he's really gotten the best out of the lineup so far. I think, Maxey's ascension in a lot of ways has kind of been on his own, and not necessarily him being put in the best positions to succeed, but rather him putting himself in those positions to succeed. So I just, mainly for the same reasons James just said, I sold the beach house a long time ago. And I don't think Rivers is to blame for everything. And we can kind of talk about that a little bit more, but there's a whole lot of not learning and not evolving and not growing that's been going on with Rivers, and started before he showed up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, as far as like the slow start to the season, I definitely don't put that fully on Doc. I honestly put more of that on Embiid, with just kind of the mentality, how he came out. And that's not on Doc to say, like, give effort, man. Like, that's on Joel and himself to kind of turn up and play. But with that being said, like, I think he's far from like a fall guy in the phrasing. Like, when you think back to, it's amazing when we look at these shorthanded games, how Doc still kind of manages to become the story. Like that Wizards loss sticks out in my head, of just repetitively having PJ Tucker, 6'5" PJ Tucker guarding 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis, who just is turning around and shooting over him. And like, in that specific game, that was when he tossed Paul Reed in, when PJ picked up his third foul in the second quarter, and Paul Reed immediately gets an offensive rebound, tips it out to Harden, who hits a three, and then on the net, plays good defense down that end, sprints down and gets a transition dunk. And it's like, that splash is what we need, and that's everything. And Montrezl Harrell, who has been directly credited by Daryl Morey and by everyone for Doc Rivers being the reason that he came here, like, Montrezl has been horrible to start this year. And this is coming, like, I would consider myself a fairly pro Montrezl Harrell guy. I've enjoyed his game in the past. I think there's a lot of good qualities. He looks far more washed than I expected. And like, to kind of see this be like the debate, like, we're running through the same thing all over again. And like, DeAndre Jordan last year, it was painfully obvious that he had nothing left in the tank. And it took like a full mutiny from Sixers Twitter, media, fans, whatever you want to call it, for Doc to finally play Paul Reed. And I even think that, like, when he finally did play Paul Reed in this, it was like, here, I'll show you why it's not ready. And Paul Reed went out and dropped like 25 and 10 in the last game of the regular season. So I think it's like, the issue I do have with Doc is, I feel like it's you kind of have to win, not in spite of him, because that's a little harsh, but it's like, he's never going to go out and win you a game, which is what I absolutely like need to see from my head coach.
Yeah, I want to go into Paul Reed a little bit, like just to talk about this. I mean, obviously, we can do this all day with Paul. It's these things like Paul Reed is so versatile. We talk about the things that he does, and a lot of people want to talk about the things he doesn't do. But like when you look at what he does bring to the table and so many gaps that he can fill and so many lineups that he can make better, it just makes no sense to me that he's not like if you have your list of players in certain situations that you're going to like Paul Reed puts himself if Embiid's not on the floor, like even if Embiid is on the floor at times, like if they're playing Kristaps and they're like two bigs, if they're playing like Gafford and Kristaps, like Paul Reed should be on the floor.
Yeah.
Like he is the fix all. Like he is the glue that would hold that together. And I don't know why that's not like that should be a celebrated talent to have. That should be a quality that players and coaches should be like yearning for on their team. And rather, Doc is like, he's not a traditional big man. He doesn't protect the rim and set screens 35 feet from the basket. I don't want him. And that makes no sense to me because Paul does so many different things on the court that help the team without asking for anything in return. Montrezl Harrell comes on the court, posts up immediately, and calls for the ball to clog up the offense for 30 seconds. And I like Montrez. I think he'll do some good things. And again, it should be matchup based at times.
Yeah.
But Montrezl Harrell stops the offense, stops the flow. Paul Reed is a constant motor, which keeps things moving. There's a very contrasting qualities between the two bigs, and I don't know how they get mixed up because it feels like it should be a pretty clean-cut decision in certain situations, and it seems like it's not sometimes.
Yeah, no victory tour here, James.
No, that's right. I mean, like I mean, Paul Reed is not a traditional big. I think that's kind of the point, Doc, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Like hey, if Rivers really wants some traditional bigs, really would have been great to see him 7 years ago when we had Okafor, Noel. I mean, they would have been. Can you just imagine the plays Rivers would have drawn up for those? I'm kidding. Right, exactly. I mean, I for me the biggest difference between like average or just below average defense and then good, just above average defense is just effort, right? Like you just have to like give a shit ultimately, like and. There's really not a lot of that going on in, I mean, we could talk about Harden, obviously, but when you throw Reed in there, it's a spark plug. He's a spark plug. He's going to provide effort. He's going to provide energy. Whether or not he's like mistiming lobs or whatever is a different issue entirely. But when it is so painfully obvious that the transition defense stinks, that there are all of these just effort problems on the defensive end, why not just give a guy like Paul Reed a chance? Let him run free. Just, he's going to fight and he's going to put in the effort and put in the energy to make his presence felt. And that's something that has been so painfully lacking from the Sixers so far this season. And so to see him get time and then actually make good on that when he is putting in effort and just leaving it all out on the floor is, for me, it feels good because I know he's capable of that. And I know that's what's going to happen. And for Rivers, I don't know if it's like sour or what the problem is. I don't know if like Paul Reed told him a bad joke in the locker room or what, like there's gotta be something else. Right. But no, I think I am glad that we're in a safe Paul Reed is great space. And that's kind of the culture we have here. Definitely.
Oh yeah, no, I've lived in the Paul Reed is safe space since the Sixers been drafted. And honestly, what I do think it is though is when Paul Reed showed up to the Sixers organization, Doc Rivers immediately made his mind up that this kid cannot play. Like he's too weird because he is like a strange player for sure. He's very unique in the way he moves, the way he just plays, and how scattery he is. But with that being said, like the effort he brings, the energy he brings is all stuff that the Sixers team needs. And being switchable as a big man, which directly correlates to the scheme that they're trying to build and trying to get better at. These are all reasons. And when we talk about like, there's two reasons that like I'm so keyed in and locked in on why Paul Reed must play. I mean, first off, it's way more fun to watch Paul Reed go out there and mess up than it is to watch Montrezl Harrell mess up. Like at least when Paul Reed is like doing his overly fouling or whatever, he's just leaving it all out there. The moments where Trez is fouling, it's like they're just getting free layups and you're clogging up the offense. It's just, and there's moments where he's looked okay, sure, but like the bad of Paul Reed, I'll take over the bad of Montrezl Harrell every day of the week. And secondly, like the ultimate goal of the regular season is you're finding out your rotation, finding out your guys for the postseason. I can already confidently say Montrezl Harrell has no business being in a playoff rotation because we've seen this in years past. Like Spencer talked about, Doc Rivers was literally fired from the Clippers for playing Montrezl Harrell too much in the playoffs, and they just bullied him in pick and roll. They just took it at him every single possession. Paul Reed is capable of holding up. I don't know about, like, we'll see in his long term, but if we look at just last season, he absolutely was not a polished product and not ready for playoff minutes, but that's a product of Doc not giving him the opportunity to be ready for it. The growing pains that he has and weaknesses he has are things that are so, like, he will work through with just more time on the court, and he just kind of hasn't got that. And to switch gears a little bit, another guy that I kind of want to bring up in the same breath is Matisse Thybulle. And Matisse was a guy that we saw get less than 6 total minutes through the first 6 games and then has been thrust back in the rotation. I'll start with you, James. I know you've been more pro Matisse than I have kind of throughout this podcast. So what kind of has your thought process been there?
I don't know what to make of this situation. At some nights he looks valuable. I thought he did a good job the other night against Phoenix. But there's no progression. Like, there's no extra side of this. And I know Daniel House came to his aid and gave him some encouraging words, which, by the way, we love to see that. Shout out to Daniel House. We knew that was going to be part of his job description, right? Like, come in and just say nice things about people.
Vibes guy.
Yeah, vibes guy for sure. And he's done a good job of that. But when you're looking at Matisse, like, the jumper looks a little bit more clean, but it's not there. He's hit a couple floaters, but, like, that's the only addition that we've seen offensively. Defensively, like, when you look at lineups, like, again, when you're talking about, like, the quirkiest, weirdest, like, death lineup of all time, like, if you want to have D'Anthony Melton, Matisse Thybulle, and Paul Reed all on the court at the same time, like, you're putting hell on the other team defensively. You're gonna have the worst offensive sets of all time, but you're gonna be wreaking havoc on the other end. So there's definitely, I think Matisse is a valuable player when you're looking at certain things. I don't know what his trade value is. Like, it's just such a weird, vague, gray land that Matisse Thybulle lives in, where he's the same player he was 4 years ago, but it's good enough to, like, warrant a roster spot, but not good enough to warrant, like, legit rotational minutes. It's just this weird in between. And, like, I just don't know what the end goal is. 5 games into the year, he's not seeing the floor unless it's like a defensive specialist. It's how he started last year too, and how he started the year before. So it's like, what do you do? Yeah. When is he going to get better? I hope he gets better soon. But, like, we've been wishing this for years. So I don't know. I really don't know. And D'Anthony Melton does what he does just, like, way better. And he can shoot the ball and get to the rim. So I don't know.
Totally. Spencer, what about you?
I mean, I think that was going to look great in a Detroit Pistons jersey next season. I mean, all jokes aside, I've given him every benefit of the doubt to this point. And every season it starts the same. He's worked on his jumper. His shot looks more fluid. It looks better. It looks improved. You better watch out because Tease is coming. And it hasn't happened yet. And at this point, I would be more surprised if it did happen than if it didn't. And he does give you a lot on defense, but like James is saying, you have D'Anthony Melton now, who at least can handle the ball a little bit, who can provide something on offense, because right now it's just a zero from him. It's just an absolute zero. And he's probably, I would honestly be surprised if he lasted past the trade deadline at this point, just because, the Sixers didn't extend him and he's, going to be a restricted free agent this summer. And unless Morey works out a sign and trade over the summer or whatever, but right now I don't know what his value is either, but it might be better to just, if you could get some sort of, like we were saying earlier, some sort of ball handler, even if it's just, not somebody that you can really count on deep in the playoffs. Because at this point, we saw it last year too, that was just going to be hunted in the playoffs. That's what's going to happen. The Raptors did it, when he was eligible to play. The Heat certainly did it. And he's not a guy you can really carry deep into the playoffs, no matter how good his defense is, at least right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And throughout this podcast, me and James have kind of sat on the opposite sides of this with both Matisse and Ben Simmons. And in the way that, like, I kind of always look at things through the playoff lens of like you just can't have that type of deficiency in your game to be able to stay on the court on either side of the floor. You have to at least be like somewhat competent in both areas. And Matisse, like, I'm sick of the press conference, the quotes, the late practice clips of him shooting. And like I believe that he's trying and putting in the work, but like I don't see the confidence on the court. He's shooting 20% from three so far this year. And it's like there just has to be something there, and there just really isn't. And now with that being said, like the Sixers totally needed his skill set on the defensive end, like especially when they were getting killed in transition, and just like even watching guys like Jason, like we're having 37-year-old PJ Tucker try and guard Jason Tatum. It's like, let's at least like try this. And I also kind of thought that they're going to try and like showcase Matisse to start the year to kind of build some value. And that was just the direct opposite of the case, like not even getting off the bench. And I do totally agree that I think DeAnthony Melton brings what he brings for the most part and does way more on the offensive end, especially the way he can ball handle, do everything. And like Melton rocks. I think he's been the bright spot for me of this, like the new additions and of this team this year. But I really don't know what you do with Matisse, because while the Sixers kind of need his style of play, we're kind of going through the same motions. We already know this guy can't play in the postseason. So it's a very strange kind of progression. And I don't really know where this story kind of ends.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know where, if you think about it, I don't know what kind of lineup he fits in anywhere, right? Like the Sixers have probably one of the best like when everything's clicking, one of the best offenses in, across the league. And if, Thybulle can't make it work in the Sixers offense, I know I was joking about Detroit earlier with Cunningham and Ivy and Sadiq Bey. And I think their offensive upside is high. But if he's not making it work in the Sixers offense, or the Sixers can't find ways to kind of hide, his serious deficiencies on that end, I'm not really sure where it's going to work out, or where his defense is going to be so impactful and so important that it ends up being a net even on the offensive end. Right. Again, like you said, that said, I was clamoring for him earlier this season when the Sixers were just getting demolished, in transition, because I think he is somebody else that, like Paul Reed, just provides effort and provides energy off the bench, which you can't exactly coach, you can't teach, and whether or not he's crushing it offensively, he's going to put his head down and work on defense. So I don't know where he fits in, but it's just this weird situation where the Sixers there's still like a thread that the Sixers kind of still just need him a little bit, Yeah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I want to to look at it from some sort of bright light, trying to find a way. And I know we talked about this when Harden first got here, and it was the comparisons to Bruce Brown and being like, oh, well, you could use him that way. There has to be, like, again, this is what I'm talking about, like having some sort of creativity within an offense. Like, you're going to have to go small ball lineups where Matisse is your 4 essentially and is playing a different role. And the mindset of his offense has to change drastically. Like, for whatever reason, he's slotted into this 3 and D player. The defense is there. The 3 is so far from being there that you have to find another role for him. And they're in the modern NBA. There are roles for that. I think he should be being used differently. He should be looked at as an entirely different offensive player, as a rim runner and as a slasher, way more than he should be looked at as a floor spacer. So if there's some sort of hope for him offensively, it's that they just trash this idea and his current role as an offensive player and move on to some sort of hybrid 3-4-5 role where PJ Tucker's playing the 5 or Paul Reed is playing the 5, and they just get real freaky with the lineup and use him as the unique talent that he is, maximize the defense and maybe a zone set, and then have him as a pick and roll slasher on the other end. It's just, I don't know that it'll ever happen. So I don't have the confidence to say that, like, there's the upside. I don't know if it'll happen or not. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. He is weird. We got a lot of weird players on this team, and little bit of a rough start to start this season. So Sixers 5-6 through the first 11 games, still early in the season, plenty of time to right the ship. And hopefully next time we're back, we're checking in with a little bit more positive vibe. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Sixers team during the stretch without Harden and kind of see what the pieces. I don't think Morey's done based on the kind of how I see this team, and it's not as finished of a product as I kind of expected. So we'll see. We'll be here every step of the way. Spencer, I appreciate you for coming on, man. Let everybody know where they can find you, they can check out your awesome work at heavy.com and everything else.
Yeah. So heavy.com, Spencer Richardson, heavy on Sixers. I also do a little Mavs writing for Heavy as well. So heavy on Mavericks. And then on Twitter, it's Spencer on Hoops. So at Spencer on Hoops, hit me up. And yeah, thank you guys both for having me on. Anytime you need somebody to fill in, hit me up, call me. I'll hop on. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. James, any final words?
Nah, man, go Sixers. We're getting into the real start of the season now, so
right.
Everyone buckle in.
Yeah, day
right.
one.
That's right. Game 2 against the Hawks coming up. So Sixers 1-0 by our standards. So, yeah, appreciate all you guys. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have not already, and we will get back with you next time.